Well, good morning, everybody. We're going to do a very detailed Facebook Live, good slideshow. I'll be on X Space with Jonathan Bahai at 4 p.m. Eastern. We'll get into Q&A with public. If folks want to watch this, get familiar with the topics at hand, and then come on to the space at 4 p.m. In this title, two links. The slideshow I'm going to be going through. And then, of course, I give a link to the X space. So at 4 p.m. Eastern, you can come jump in on that space. So I'm going to go into things that have happened with our party that we're trying to register. I had a good conversation with one Kevin Fortin, who's Party 51's head. They've since merged with us, and we're going to go the path of Canada, the 51st state, by trying to get PCC, Party of the Canadian Constitutionalists, registered. We have well over 10,000 Canadian folks with us, 6,000 memberships. We got 4,000 still to sign up. We're going to be doing that. And we're going to be targeting with Elections Canada the new list as well as the French list from both Quebec and New Brunswick. So Kevin Fortin, Liana, and Rick, all French-speaking Quebecois, are going to tackle this. We're going to ask for more volunteers, go through the process of talking to these registered accountants that are try that. Quebec operates a little different. Quebec operates a little different than Canada. We may see success. I'm not promising anything. We haven't done too well with that right across Canada. I've had hundreds of interviews. We were very close in the last snap election. Thought we had that person. They went back to their peer group and probably the Crown, and were not willing to risk their business or their education that they swore to, and they took that oath. So it's still positive. We're still going to try, because that's what we do. We try. We never give up. But I'm going to go through this slideshow now. It's in today's X Space title on J.D. Vance, Vice President of the United States. His references to Marco Rubio and others. And then from there, I'm going to get into what's critical with us, what we have to do as Canada, the 51st state, in the U.S. historical model system and legal system of that of the United States. A lot of people have never, ever truly looked at Canada, the 51st state, in any detail at all. They've never looked at the legalities of it. How would that look in the federal, what's imposed federally by the United States system? What's required through that system to become a state? What are our legal obligations? How we get there? What about the French and the First Nations in Canada? Well, I'm going to go through a lot of that today, and absolutely in tremendous detail on the X Space at 4 p.m. We're going to go through that. But I'm going to give you all a basic run through here on Facebook, because I'm strong and dominant on this platform, as you can be. And so I want to make sure everybody's aware, you understand. I've asked everybody to watch PBS's American Revolution mega mini-series, 6 episodes, 6 that are 2 hours apiece. It's important to do that to understand French America in the United States today, how it works. Understand as well Spanish America in the United States and how it works today. And then to understand American Indians in America today. I think that when we're dealing with Canadian loyalists, and when I say that, sure, there's the British heritage of it, but when we talk about loyalists today, this is all of Canada's politicians, Canada, the country, recognized, yes, from a British model, largely unamended, but it's this evil from that system that they control and harness absolutely in the role of prime minister and premiers of the provinces. None of these people are your friends. They could care less about Canadians. If you've watched the American Revolution, you should already have the answers to those questions. And you learn about the first Prime Minister of the UK. Well, that is not the first Prime Minister to ever be found in the world. That was a title bestowed upon New France, Quebec, and then became part of British North America, and then went into the UK. It did not exist before King George III. If you've watched the American Revolution, you'll notice all the Haitian German troops that filled the British ranks through the entirety of the war. Why were so many Germans in line with the British Empire? Because King George III was Germanic. He didn't even speak English. Did you know that? King George III didn't speak English. He spoke German, French, and Latin, the language of kings, his Germanic ascension. Yeah, that's why it's important to watch the American Revolution. It starts to fill in gaps, which is what I'm going to do as I go through this slideshow, gaps that people may not realize, and to understand why the American Revolution was so important for those British subjects breaking away, and how they got to where they did, what they did with the French, which is why when we do Canada, the 51st state, we have to do it together. And before Canadians all say, oh no, from the Anglo side, we're going to go through this slideshow, and at the end of it, you all decide, especially with First Nations, as many of you have asked questions about that all over Canada. I have lots of you who may think I'm ignoring you. It's now that time. It's now that time after the PBS special. Now I can go through a lot of more of my work without backlash, without people hammering me, because the world of experts globally can't deny these truths. It's now mainstream, at least in the United States. And for anyone with courage to watch that program, you can't deny it. And there's so many historians and guests brought in from all over the world. They're experts. I'm going to tell everybody, several of them, for example, Atkinson, I know him very well. I've been in mass Zooms with him over a long period of time during COVID. It's gone kind of quiet with me with him because I've kind of learned all the things I wanted to, and I presented to him a lot. And he is one of the major historians involved in that project for 8 years. There's another one from Massachusetts who flew out now 8 years ago, first American academic to come meet me, interview me in Edmonton, Alberta. And he's involved in that project too. So everything about Canada, there's lots of me there. There's lots of other actual Canadians who actually worked with some of these historians who were critical in building that project. So I don't care, I'm not named or whatever, but there are pieces of me and the things that I've worked on that are in there. And it's amazing. It's amazing. I watched it. Absolutely all my work on American Indians and Canada's First Peoples, absolutely all of them and their tribal things that I've been teaching people for a long time now, since Alberta independence. And that's all articulated there. Now, Americans were going to probably do that anyway. I just know that it reinforces everything I've tried to do since Alberta independence and what I'm trying to do with Canada, the 51st state. So without further ado, we're going to get into some majors here. And we're going to start with J.D. Vance. And this is, folks, what I've warned Canadians about for some time. 51st staters, absolutely. That there are other pathways to Canada, the 51st state, that don't include a big Canada. It definitely doesn't include any provinces. In fact, they're carved up and destroyed. Any way we do this, they are. But if you want to hold on to the best things of Canada and get rid of the worst, Canada, the 51st state, is the only way to go. President Donald J. Trump has known this since the start of it for him in 2024. It's not the start of it for him. 2018, I think, was the critical start for Donald J. Trump. Absolutely the G7 China radar. And we're going to get into that all the way to the G20 here that Vice President J.D. Vance rolls out. We're going to get into Marco Rubio, his background. Some U.S. states that Canadians, you need to understand this, because failure to read and understand history, to know and understand in great detail your southern neighbor, your supposed to be best friend on trade and security and economic military cooperation. For all intents and purposes, USA is our best friend. Whether Canadians want to admit that or not, I can show you long before we were even Canada, even though we've always been referred to that by the United States. And of course, there's forts named that way too. If you watch the PBS special, you're going to see that. So Americans have always just seen Canada as Canada, even as British assets. They even clearly in the PBS special wanted to take Quebec. They wanted to take that. This is long before the British mass movement that was out of the American Revolution that led to what is Ontario. And of course, it comes after Quebec. And that's why that is where all the loyalists ended up, starting in Nova Scotia and then over clearly to establishing Ontario. And this is the history of Canada, the change of Quebec. It's more than just a 7-year war, the corruption of it. But we'll get into things now so that everybody has a clear picture. So I'm just going to blow this up for everybody. The thing we're looking at is Donald J. Trump's administrative second in command, Marco Rubio. And this is all in relation to the first thing we're going to look at, Russia and the 28-point peace plan that's now absolutely been rejected, as I published breaking yesterday, by the European Union. And of course now Canada. So just so everybody knows, Canada has rejected this entirely. And there's a reason for that, because this is called precedent, everybody. Inside the 28-point Trump administration peace plan, cede territory. This ceding of territory, everybody, is the hard road of Canada, the 51st state. This is northern state expansion, because if Russia and USA come up with this and this goes through, now USA can get back to the business of British North America, aka the evil of Canada, that's always been the worst against the United States. We've seen the fall of New York mayor. You saw Donald J. Trump's meeting. People asked point blank, and actually we see everybody recirculating that. Of course, so does the Vice President of the United States. But this peace proposal, ironed out by Marco Rubio, was authorized by the U.S. It's offered as a strong framework for ongoing negotiations. It's based on input from the Russian side, but is also based on previous and ongoing input from Ukraine. Okay? Ending a complex and deadly war as one of Ukraine requires extensive exchange of serious and realistic ideas in achieving durable peace. Now, Europe and Canada want Ukraine to reject it. They want Ukraine to continue to fight Russia. Now, Canadian government officials want to send Canadians there to take over where USA is leaving off to. But we all know in our history, everybody, that absolutely we will be cannon fodder. And if you haven't seen the statistics that I'm going to get into in a second, right? So Marco Rubio presents the plan. It's a massive ceding of territory that could be equivalent to what Canada would have to cede to the United States if the United States presidency current was to dissolve all US-UK treaties over the 10 provinces. Now, this does not include the territories. It's only the 10 provinces these treaties are effectual, but it literally takes most of Canada's populated Great Wall of Canada, built and designed by the British Empire, with loyalists against the United States. Now, if this peace plan goes through, it's a precedent that sets the stage for Canada now. So what has J.D. Vance got to do with this, even though he just retweeted Marco Rubio's? I'm giving you the order of tweets as of late. I did a live on this. So here's J.D. Vance. Any Ukraine-Russia peace plan has to stop the killing, preserving Ukrainian sovereignty, be acceptable to both Russia and Ukraine, maximize the chances war doesn't restart. Every criticism of the framework of the administration is working on either misunderstands the framework or misunderstands some critical reality on the ground. Okay? That this is the other part of his post. There is a fantasy that if we just give more money, more weapons, more sanctions, victory is at hand. Peace won't be made by failed diplomats or politicians living in fantasy land. It might be made by smart people living in the real world. Again, if you've watched the American Revolution, the British had serious fantasies, as did Canada and all the people from Canada. This is absolutely, basically Quebec and Montreal. They had fantasies that the people wanted to be subjects and that everything could be restored for the kingdom if they saw enough military might applied. And of course, that wasn't the reality on the ground in the United States during the War of Independence. 8 years of brutality the world had never seen before that. Average men against king, and the poor versus the rich and elite. And if you haven't seen it, you should, because this is all relevant, because it's the same thing with Russia and Ukraine and what Europe wants in fantasy, what the Canadian government wants in fantasy, because the Canadian government is going to be the real loser here. They see it clearly now with the 28-point peace plan, that if Russia gets what it wants, then when it's time for USA and Canada, USA is going to get what it wants, and they'll get the support they need from the United Nations Security Council. And there's very limited that both France and UK can do at that point, even with their other kingdoms, as they don't have permanent membership. When we look at penmanship in the United Nations Security Council, in this scenario that J.D. Vance is presenting to all of you, in this scenario, we have a USA, Russia, China penmanship against UK and France. All the rest of the monarchies do not matter. I've taught international law as it really is for some time. You won't find another Canadian as honest and most studied in the United Nations Security Council, as I've read every resolution ever published or completed in their history, learned them all in tremendous detail. I know everything there is to know about all 87 UN states who got the same stylized American independence post-World War II that USA established post the Revolutionary War of 1776, okay? So I take that claim, I make that statement seriously, and you're hard-pressed to find anybody. American academics really respect me. I'm welcomed in many universities because I don't pull punches, and I stick with facts, history, and precedent and law as it really is. I have even shock-loaded doctorates when I bring treaties and historical truths, especially post-World War II, and then they start looking at all of these kingdom empires even today and realize that they've been manipulated themselves and fallen for the propaganda. So here's more. Here is the mayor of New York. So everybody understands this. The mayor of New York called Trump a fascist. He had his meeting, and Trump doesn't make a big, huge thing about it. J.D. Vance says it's hilarious how calm, collected Trump is, even being cordial. But Americans are very good and strategic at being honest, but at the same time, nailing things to the wall. So if you've all missed it, what did I tell everybody? I told everybody that secretly, as J.D. Vance is showing you, and they're laughing at this New York mayor, I told you that the Biden administration and Marco Rubio got together in relation to Canada and a great many evils. And they were working on this off of Trump's design in 2018, the China G7 radar. And they passed in partisan many pieces of critical Canada relationship stylized going forward unacceptables and to come down hard on Canada. And just so everybody knows, I'm showing you this post that is just 24 hours old. And I told you that in majority, Republicans and Democrats would come together to end this evil, that you can only find Mamdani in New York, mayor, in Alberta, Canada. It's what recently happened and has been happening to the mayoral seat of Edmonton, Alberta, and Calgary for the last 20 years. I've been at war to war with it personally for over 20 years. Massive protesting when protesting was still legal. Yes, yellow vest we adopted from the France example, but we utilized that. You can go on my Facebook and you'll find communist marches in Edmonton. Unfortunately, a video of myself downtown Edmonton in the municipal, basically 15-minute cities forum held by the then mayor and communist, who is Danny's good friend, who trained Danny in everything he knows in relation to trying to destroy America. So the president knows, J.D. Vance knows, Marco Rubio knows, and now, as I told all of you, do you know what happened on Friday? The Senate passed an absolute majority, Congress and Senate, in massive majority, a no to socialism, condemning this system that Mamdani is trying to put forward. And, of course, there's 6 New York congressmen and senators who are behind him. But the massive majority of Democrats and Republicans alike outside of New York and California are with the Trump administration. And in supermajority, they passed that no socialism. Never, not in a million years. There'll be none of Canada coming into the United States. Gets into mass immigration. Shows you this is what happens when you secure the border. USA's doing good. Americans are happy all over the Democrat and Republican universe in mass majority. Again, that means not necessarily California and New York, who have strong ties to socialist Canada ever since the War of Independence and, of course, Spanish colonialism of California. J.D. Vance, while I'm sure the causes are complicated, no nation has leaned more into diversity as our strength. We don't need a melting pot. We have a salable immigration insanity than Canada. Calls it out. It has the highest foreign-born share of the population of entire G7, and its living standards have stagnated. Where does J.D. Vance get this information from? Where does he get it from? Oh yeah, Marco Rubio, Joe Biden, and Donald J. Trump. Because guess what? All three of them, even when Trump was in office, Marco Rubio and Joe Biden went on, and they used the China G7 radar 2018 onward. And they measured all G7 countries and traced all of their registrations, all of the shipping, the movement of people. And they know that Canada is the worst and number one. So Michael A. Arut happened in Canada will be studied by many historians and economists as the prime example of self-destruction of an otherwise prosperous nation after blindly following basically British Crown laws that was the War of Independence. Because they did that too. They tried the mass immigration in the British 13 colonies to put them down. And then that really agitated the colonists who would go for independence, the Americans. So here you see the chart, and it's the G7 radar. They started in 2018. I'm going to tell everybody right now, I've already published you all of Stat Canada results, taking us all the way back to 1993. And you see liberal, conservative, and this expansion of this graph. That Canada, you continually to die off at a much higher rate than UK, absolutely beyond all measure of standard of living and much more. This is all off the Chinese radar only, but I have the rest of it right to 1993. In fact, I've got all the way to 1960, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, and I've showcased that to American academics. I show them everything that they now trace themselves. And remember, everybody, this is Republican and Democrat entirely. Trump created it. He invested in it. He built it. It's his genius. But all the Democrats accepted it, including Joe Biden. Things he says and does, and what he does behind the scenes were two different things. And bipartisanly, they made laws against Canada and relations with Canada going forward. Americans aren't stupid. They're good at tricking people, that's for sure. And they do it honestly, too. That's what's amazing. So now I want to get into the path of PCC, Party of the Canadian Constitutionalists. Yesterday, I had a long video chat with Kevin Fortin, Party 51. He understands all this. We both agreed. So when it comes to the French language, Canada, the 51st state, will be a bilingual state. You will have the French districts, no different than the United States. You'll have the English majority districts, no different than the United States. But as a state, we will have the same setup as French and Spanish states. I'm going to give you these examples. So I'm just showing you the American colonists with French assistance won the Revolutionary War through a combination of French military, financial, and diplomatic support. So French and Americans came together to win that war. You can watch the revolution. If you didn't know, they didn't speak each other's language. They were doing two different campaigns on the same battlefield, taking critical things, and they both trampolined off each other. Hey, look what I can do. And they took out the British, and they won. They won American independence. America is founded, Statue of Liberty. If you don't all know this, you should. And to this day, there are states of the Union with massive French amalgamation. Their legislatures are French and English. Laws are French and English, and they're recognized the same. And we're going to get into that because this is going to be Canada. We can all lie about it or tell ourselves, oh, F this. That's a British mentality. That's a colonial French mentality of the old world. That's not American mentality. They don't do that. Now, the federal imposed system will be 100% English. With state powers, because the sovereignty is with the state, that will enshrine those powers of French and English. And you won't have what Francois Legault is going through with the United States and trade right now. That won't exist. And I'll show you where this goes on in the United States and nothing's said. So in 1968, this is Louisiana. The state founded the Council for Development of French in Louisiana, CODOIFL, to preserve and promote the French and Creole languages and culture. Current bilingual provisions. Constitutional recognition. The 1974 Louisiana Constitution states the rights of people to preserve, foster, and promote the respective historical, linguistic, and cultural origins is recognized. Legal documentation. All contract or act, that's law, made at the state level, made or executed in French language, is as legal and binding as if it were in English. Look, LA Revised Statute 151. Done. That's Louisiana. Undeniable. There's a bilingual state. So we did the Government Service. Louisiana French Services Program seeks to extend the practical to provide state government services to French-speaking citizens and visitors in the French language. You go to the legislature, you've got it. You speak French, that's what you get. Look at this. Judicial and public notices. While laws must be preserved in English, the General Assembly may provide for their publication in French, and they do. And the judicial advertisements of the judicial branch may be duplicated in French in designated areas. And they do in all the French districts, the French Quarter. Go look at it. It's truth. Multiple states are like this. But I just want to show you Louisiana, because I don't want to go into so much, but this exists in the United States. All states are different. So we went through that. Oh yeah, education. The state allows for the establishment of French and other world immersion programs in public schools. The Louisiana Department of Education provides guidance and certification for such programs. Students can learn Louisiana State Seal of Biliteracy. Wow, look at that. That's far better than what Francois Legault's got going on and all his opposition, right? Highway sign. The law provides for a supplement to the uniform highway marking system to include bilingual signs in both English and Louisiana French, subject to federal approval, and, of course, that's on the interstates. And guess what? They are. So now I'm just going to show you the other reverse of this, and we'll blow this up. New Mexico's bilingual laws focus on bilingual multicultural education, ensuring equitable opportunities for students, protecting the language and rights. The state was first to pass a bilingual education law, and its current laws require that bilingual programs are two languages as a medium of instruction, support culturally relevant learning environments, and prioritize students' home languages, especially for Native American children. The state constitution also protects the right to vote and hold office regardless of English or Spanish proficiency. So if you can win a majority with the Spanish speaking, you don't have to speak English. You could even be governor of New Mexico. Spanish proficiency and mandates training for teachers support both languages. They're bilingual, New Mexico, 100%. Key aspects of New Mexico's bilingual laws: Multicultural Education Act. New Mexico passed the first bilingual in 1969, updated in 1973, and later amended to align with federal laws. Instruction requirements. Programs must use two languages as a medium of instruction. The student's home or heritage language is prioritized as the primary instructional language, especially in earlier grades, with English used to improve English proficiency. So there's schools in New Mexico that are in Spanish. In the elementary level, they do teach English along to get them on board, but they absolutely are 100% Spanish first. Depends on the district. And Canadians don't understand district models. And they don't understand that Canada, the 51st state, would be cut up into its district models depending on culture, race, religion, education, language, all of it. Industry, elevation, like there's so many. It's to get the right people and the right system for the right kind of industry and topography. And it's a smart system. It's very advanced. So programs must be culturally relevant and provide equitable learning opportunities. Teacher and parent involvement, bilingual education programs are required to employ specialized bilingual teachers. Parent advisory committees represent the students. Language and culture are required. Parents are to be notified annually about their child's program placement. Parents, the states actually have parental rights, folks. So Canadians, English, French, First Nations, are you seeing something here? And I'm going to get into First Nations in a minute. And I'm just using 2 states. There's more than these 2. But these 2 are important because they're constitutionally and legally enshrined. So that's important because these 2 examples are going to be the examples of the good path to Canada, the 51st state, our political path. And we're going to do it the right way. The mistakes of America and what they've evolved and learned from, we're going to make sure we get that in our party off the ground running. We have to take that which matches us most in many different aspects. We're going to be a platform, everybody, that is representative of almost every state of the union. Something of some state of the union is going to be part of our platform so that when Americans look at it, whether they're from Texas, New Mexico, Louisiana, New York, California, and actually it's really funny, Montana or North Dakota, when we get into more, there's so many. There's just so many aspects of every state that's going to be a patchwork for us that almost every American, when they read our platform, when we get this party registered and we go through the platform, there won't be an American in any state of the union that isn't going to see a reflection of themselves, their history, and their truth of their state. And they're going to know that at least with this Canada, the 51st State Party, when they read our platform, that, wow, these people actually studied every single one of the states of the union, because that is our state there. That's a piece of our system. They couldn't have got that unless they put a lot of time in learning America, all 50 states of the union. Even Alaska is here for absolutely Canada, the 51st state. It's all about all these levels and systems and people, cultures. All of the district system can't just be a design from one state or two. It's literally Canada, just by its size and influence from so many states. And of course, the people we have within us, our languages and systems, that we will be a patchwork of nearly all 50 states of the Union. In fact, all the way out to Hawaii. Even Hawaii has a piece inside it that's reflective of what Canada could be as a 51st state. And I think that's the most amazing part of this journey and where we're going to go. And I'm excited, of course, when we get the account and we can actually do this together as a team, it's going to be great right across Canada. And then the amount of Americans that will recognize this, it's just going to be awesome. So to continue on, constitutional protections, New Mexican Constitution, the right to vote, hold office, as I told you, serve on a jury, regardless of ability to speak or write English or Spanish. So jury service, if it's an English person under trial or something, they have to have a translation for the Spanish. They have to, and vice versa, right? They have to do all that. It mandates that the state provide training for teachers to become proficient in both languages, focus on tribal languages. The state has to implement programs to support the use of Indigenous language that require consultation with tribal leadership. That comes from the imposed federal constitution. In order for them to get this, the federal government imposed that. Think about that, First Nations, right? And this will all be shared and taught as we go in the evolution of America and what the federal government has imposed when states ask for these things, like, oh, you want that Spanish or that French, right? Well, sure, no problem, but you're going to impose all of the First Nations stuff too from the federal government. You're going to impose that for all the tribes who've written their own constitutions and worked through the laws of the federal government. You're going to give them the same access, and you're going to help us with that. And then we'll allow this to continue, won't challenge you. Pretty neat, eh? These are the state level federal things. They're kind of kept quiet in the United States because it's each state with the federal government when they're enshrining their powers or trying to step on federal authority and toes. They work very well together, and it's often not published, even though several times a year. The Better Angels helped with that PBS presentation too for 12 years. I met them as well too in my second last trip. And of course, we had a nice meeting, me and Rob Tavoni, with them in Washington, D.C. About 30 of them, we got to participate. But they educate this stuff, and they do this at the state level in all states of the union. They're one of the largest involved, and you see state amendments like at least twice a year on average. It's not all universal, but on average, that's what it is. And they're highly involved in that, and these things aren't published out to the world. It's in-house 50-state business between them and the federal government. They do it all the time, but we don't get to see that. I've been seeing it. I'm just getting involved in it now, and it's pretty cool. It sure makes me want statehood more. Yeah, so recent legislation, this is New Mexico, right? Changes focus on strengthening the role of heritage language in the classroom. There have been lawsuits. Yazy versus Martinez versus the state of Yazy and Martinez versus state of New Mexico. Alleging the state has not provided sufficient funding or resources for linguistically, culturally relevant education for English language learners, right? Making it so the English kids could learn. So they actually fought to have that done to make sure it was appropriate, and they won. And that their Supreme Courts have ruled that way, right? So, yeah. Not like Canada. None of this is ever enshrined. Giveth and take away as they see fit. Federal education for First Nations in the USA for language protection is supported through initiatives like the Esther Martinez Native American Language Preservation Act of 2006, right? So this is the federal government, right, which funds immersion schools, language nests, and Native American Language Act of 1992. So the federal government kept building on it, right? And they've been doing this since Richard Nixon. He started it in 1972, but Ford completed it by 1975. Much of American civil rights for absolutely all Native Americans, most of it comes from Richard Nixon's work, Republican, which Donald J. Trump supports 100%. And again, the key words there were federal, right? So we'll blow this up. Oh, yes, we already had this. So I must have accidentally added the slide. Yeah, we already went through that. Oh, Administration for Native Americans, ANA. The ANA administers grants, support Native American language revitalization, preservation projects led by communities. This includes funding for community-driven projects to develop language learning opportunities and strengthen community language skills. You won't see this in Canada. Heritage Brief, Native American Language Policy in the United States. This is huge for people to understand. The federal government's policy, it's massive. Here is the War of Independence. This is the map. I know it's a little harder to see. I have better maps. But look how they've evolved, right? Look at the size. I hope you can all see all these reserves down south. Here's where there's no reserves. So you notice what happened if you watch those videos, especially with Six Nations and the British Loyalists? Look, Look at no real reserves. I mean, there's dots. These are representative of just like Canada. Just like Canada. So you see this big white spot here? I'm sorry, there's other colors here. It's a mass amount of property, okay? They have the rest from here over, down, and of course, there's Alaska. You can't. So think of Alaska. 2/3 of it is for reservation, basically. 3 groups. So it's a massive amount of land. But look at this. If you add up all that Indian property that's their sole property, it's 1/50th of the United States. 1/50th, the equivalent of a state. Every state has these. Some states of the Union are 1/3 to 2/3 Indian reserve. Yeah. How does that work for the provinces of Canada? Provinces of Canada look like post-war of independence. And this is a big thing for Six Nations here. And they feel like they lost everything in the U.S. Well, go to Canada. Guess what? You're on even less land. More people on much less land. More people on much less land. This is a great one to look at the office. There's the vision. There's the truth of Alaska. See all that? Massive. That's Alaska. This is the rest of the United States, the 1/50th. I know it's hard to see here, but all those land reserves, lots of it, and then it's just little dots like Canada. And that comes from joining with the British, being the Canadian model. And then, of course, this part of America, there's absence of any real land or viable land for those people. Of course, not all nations. Look at the rest over here. And I wish, well, I can blow this up. Right? So all the blue, there's light blue here. I know it's hard to see. It's still hard to see, isn't it? But this, if you look at this, these are the dots. This is representative of how Canada and its Indian Act work. Those are those northern states. Of course, New York, worst of the worst. And why? It was held by the British the longest, had the home base of the Loyalists, who all ran to Canada. And all this tremendous amount of land that's been given to the First Peoples, theirs alone, and their sovereignty, and never touched, right, is not existent in Canada. The Crown holds it all. Canadian First Nations, you can't even see your reserves from outer space in Canada. It's just like New York over here and some of these other states where they rebelled. And this used to be, remember, this was Quebec. All this was Quebec, right? You have your 13 colonies there, but all this was Quebec. So remember why. And you know what? You can run USA down for this history and what happened there through the revolution and post. But that's entirely Canada. 100% Canada. You want to see this? Go to Canada. Go to Canada. That's all of it. A tremendous amount of people with nothing. That's why they're the most impoverished. Besides which are the same people, by the way, because Six Nations goes up there too, but then there's all the rest. And the ones that are up here, sadly, in Canada, who live just like this, in poverty and under an Indian Act, all their same people, all have tremendous amounts more. And they're the same people. All of these people are most of the Canadian First Peoples up here. And they live exactly like this in Canada. So is Canada really good for you? Was it ever really good for you? No, it never was. Everything that happened in the States happened in Canada 10 times worse to upwards of 2,000 times worse. When we look at genocide, 2,000 times worse. And this is why USA and Russia, while they're competitors globally and they don't like each other, they have an honesty about the genocide. When it comes to USA here, and all this land and all the people, because there's 3 times more American Indians than there are Canadian First Peoples, even though so many ran away to Canada, and that was the wrong decision. and they're the same people, but the problem with going with the British was you got genocided 2,000 times worse than the American Indian counterparts did or the Russian First Peoples. 2,000 times. And all you have to do is look at the claims of disease, residential school, and you find out for some reason Canada is 2,000% more than USA and Russia combined with a tremendously higher population of them. That's pathetic. So I highlight this at the very end for Canadian First Peoples. You're in a lot of trouble here. New legislation could expand First Nation status. Here's what you need to know. So this is taking, it's assimilation. It's basically giving up your status to the children you have. Canada's doing it very evilly. It's more assimilation and Indian Act evil. If you haven't seen this new Senate Bill 2, I believe, it's terrible. The 6S status 1 and 2, and then the children, and then soon you won't have any status at all. They're trying to genocide First People quietly through this legislation. And I leave with this because in the USA, that's why they have blood quantum. That's why they have tremendous lands and their own sovereignty, and they allow the races to remain ethnically aside, equal citizens within the Union, the same power as the state if the nations codify. And these laws, they stripped their Indian Act a long, long time ago, more than 100 years. Then they had the Indian Citizenship Act, and it went on for 2 more. And then, of course, by that time, by 1931, same time around Westminster, a little bit before it, Canada started panicking again because American Indians were given the power to codify themselves as sovereign and have their own constitutions. And they still work at it just like states of the Union. There's still many First Nations in the United States that need to do that. What Canada, the 51st state, promises is all those lost nations in those northern area from the War of Independence, Canada can reciprocate the land lost, and we can square up as a full country, United States of America, Canada, the 51st state. Those nations, you know, the choices you made, as sad as that is, you picked the wrong side, but you can square up in Canada. There's still a massive amount of Crown land that the Crown holds that can be divided for you too, because you're the same people and the same losses. And then, of course, all of those codified in the U.S. can help establish their counterparts in the rest of Canada with the tremendous Crown land. That will be done. That will be in our platform. And just so everybody knows, we won't be negotiating that. It takes a president of the United States who will effectually have control of all the Crown land. When Canada goes, we'll get through that in our platform, but all of the Crown land that currently exists as federal or provincial will absolutely become entirely U.S. federal. And of course, the federal government won't have that much federal land. They're going to turn that into private property and Indian reservation. Indian reservation will be done first. That will be in our platform that we will make it that when we can do this, and I will show you all the states of the Union that have done this and made that a precedent. And again, you saw the map. There are states of the Union that are 2/3 Indian reservation. Okay? Your system is what made America. They introduce you that on the first video in this series of American Revolutionary War, American Independence. The first opening sentence is a longhouse, and it tells you that America's natural laws, its system of government, its democracy, its new vision for everyone to be free is absolutely 100% the adoption of what Native Americans were under the Confederacy, the Six Nations Confederacy. So that's presented, told you, that's where the independent judiciary comes from in the United States. Natural rights, the earth around you, what you're born with, that comes from the American Indians. Americans have never had that since the Revolutionary War. They've always been honest about that. Did they do massacres on those who went with the British? Yes, they did. But as you can see on the map, there's no Canadian First Nation with anywhere near the rights and freedoms the rest of the American Indians have, let alone the mass amounts of lands they have. There's nowhere in Canada like that. So all those that went British or stayed in that model, not only did you get genocided at 2,000% more than your Russian and American counterparts, you also got removed of all your land at an explosive rate, 200 times more than the American Indian. And you have no sovereignty, no rights. The government owns you like property, like cattle. But it's not really much different than the Canadian subject. So, folks, this is my presentation. It's a great slideshow. It's not going to last. I need Jonathan Bahai to upload it. He will probably. I'll take all Q&A on X today, and I'll go back to this later, and I'll check your comments, any questions. We are, like what I'm endeavoring to do today is to tell you, we've made a deal with the French separatists and 51st staters in the image of America and the 50 states of the Union. We've talked about it in great length. I'm just letting you know that this is our party going forward. For all First Peoples in Canada, this is the effect we're going to bring to you, that you have massive, some of you between 200% and 500% more land than you have now, that you actually own, have control of your resources, full sovereignty, that you will negotiate with whoever's the president of the United States when you codify your nation's constitutions. And we'll teach you how to do that, because it's going to be at the same time Canada, the 51st state, has to do their state constitution. You can all start getting ready and doing the same process. We're all going to work on it together. It'll be in the platform that we'll all be paid unto the Canadian people together, and we're going to get it all done. So there will be no secrets. There's no hiding. We are taking everything of the 50 states and all their history, precedent, law, and absolute granting of federal imposition from the United States. We will never try to usurp any of that. We will follow the path of statehood. And of course, if we don't, there's the northern expansion of the states of the Union. And from there, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen. That's the hard way, the not so great way. And I mean, at the end of the day, I would probably accept that too. This J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, Donald J. Trump, Joe Biden way that they've been planning since 2018. In majority. I hope you all understand that. Massive majority. If you missed it Friday, what did I tell you? Massive majority. Like huge. California and New York are on their own now. That's what I'm trying to tell everybody. And why? Because they're the most poisoned by Spanish colonialism for California and unfortunately British colonialism for New York. And the sixth state of Canada, who's been playing them back and forth since day one. That's the truth. The most trade with the most socialist and fascist. Those states have been corrupted the most. God bless everybody. Share, get it out there. The rest of the states of the Union are on board with America's vision going forward. Not New York or California's vision, which is Canada's corruption. God bless everybody. Share. Get it out there. Bye now.